Hello digital tool students, and welcome back to week 6, and we're going to introduce a bit of tools from Adobe Photoshop. So let me start by opening the Photoshop application CS6, and yours should look something like this. You may have Creative Cloud, again you may have CS5, but you will basically have an interface that's something like this. Now we haven't really opened anything except the application. I don't really have a window or an image set yet. One thing I wanted to do, I wanted to quickly through on this video just to go through these tools that you see on the left hand side. I want to open up another document as well for you. Hold on just a second. If we can zoom in on this just for a second. I will email this to you. It's just a very kind of a quick little cheat sheet that shows you the basic names of the tools. We've got the Move tool, rectangular marquee. By the way, in this area right up here, this green area, these are selection tools. And what I mean by selection, you point and click at something. They have different parameters. Every one of these tools, as you can see, has a drop down, an arrow on the right, which means they have other parameters, or maybe they toggle back and forth between several different kinds of variations of that tool, like the eraser, the gradient, blur, etc., etc. We will go through these. They all have their classifications, and I promise you, you won't use all of these tools, probably not even half of these tools. But for those of you that really get into this, you'll see that it's quite a powerful program, as you might imagine. So I'm going to keep this image over here just somewhere nearby so I can direct myself to that every once in a while. So it's on the desktop. Now, Adobe Photoshop Creative Suite 6. I've actually created the files that I sent to you, and I actually did a photograph of myself per the assignment. So I'm going to somehow pretend that I'm going to be swimming underneath the ocean with some fishes, okay? Yeah, I know that's crazy, that's wacky, but that's your postcard assignment. And before we get into that, I am going to go ahead and open my background image so I can have some kind of image just to play with. And we'll get more into the next video about how you edit your photographs. So this is very much what you'll do in Photoshop. You're going to say, once you've opened the program, you're going to say Open, and you look for the file. On my desktop, I have a folder where I put my two images, my background image and then the photograph that I took of myself, and it's not cleaned up. I made the background actually kind of busy and dirtier than you probably will. Don't do what I did. I'm just showing you the worst case scenario because it makes it more difficult to clean the background away, because I just want my body superimposed into a new environment. So I'm going to click on postcard. I'm going to go to underwater, and you can see my image here of the fish underwater, and it's already been sized just like yours, 4 inches by 6 inches, a horizontal, 300 dpi, and the modality, the color mode is CMYK. And cyan, magenta, yellow, black is the typical color mode for things that are going to be printed, like magazines, newspapers, flyers, etc., etc. All right, let's look at these tools. Let me zoom in just a little bit, and let's look at these tools. We have the Move tool here. Now the Move tool is where you have an area selected or an object selected, much like you did in Adobe Illustrator. It's a bit different in Photoshop, but that Move tool is where you will grab something and move it. Right now, it's important to know that you've got to see layers. Let's see, my layers are turned on, but I'm zoomed in so much I can't see it. Let me zoom back out, and you can see my layers over here. You have to get familiar with these tools as well, but this one that looks like, yeah, oh, here we go. It says layers, and I can see I've got one layer. If I have more layers, I could go to the bottom of this, and I can create more layers by clicking this tab, bottom right, if you can see, and I could keep adding layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. You know, layer 2 might be my body, layer 2 or 3 may be bubbles coming out of my mouth if I want, you know. I could just keep doing these. If I want to delete layers, I select them. If you hold down Shift, you can do a multiple select of objects as well as layers. And I'm going to delete those and throw those in the trash. My trash for that is not the trash for my computer, but the trash away from this, the layers, and it's all in this little bar. By the way, just make sure your setup is the same as mine. Here again, the workspace. See, by default, this is in motion. I don't want to do that. We're going to be using photography. So let me convert to photography. Okay, and you do the same. So we'll see the tools have changed, a lot more minimal. All right, let me look at one other thing. Let's see if I say essentials, what would that look like? So we've got color, we still have layers, channels, paths. We won't use paths, channels. We will use layers, so make sure that's open over here on the right. And a lot of this stuff, it's a lot of clutter that may not impact you. By the way, if you ever want to get rid of these things, you can grab a tab, like it says adjustment over here. I could grab it and take it off, and I could separate it, and then I could close it if I wanted to. I'm actually going to leave it there just in case. I'm just going to, you can drag these things and arrange them however you want. So you can customize this. In fact, if you customize any of your photo project, your workspace, you can actually just save it. You can save it as a new customization, and you can say new in CS6, and you could rename it, and it'll be your workspace. Okay. So let's go back with, by the way, let me look at typography, see the difference here. To tell you the truth, I think we want to use the typography, okay? So go workspace, typography, because we are going to add type, and this one seems to have the typography on here. Beautiful. Okay, so we got character, paragraph, we got layers, etc. All right, enough about that. So look at these tools again. We've got selection tools up here in this top quadrant. And here's the marquee tool. That's if I want to select an area here. Okay, I'm on my background layer over here to the right. And by the way, when you get multiple layers, you're only working on one layer at a time. So whatever you affect, it's just going to affect that layer, whatever you do. If I wanted to take this and move it, see how I took a big chunk out of it? Because I selected an area with that marquee tool, the rectangular marquee. I'm going to undo, which is Command Z or Control Z on your PC. Let's do this. Let's change this from the rectangle to an ellipse. Okay, I'm going to go elliptical. I'm going to go elliptical tool. If I remember, if I hold down Shift, much like Illustrator, it'll make the ellipse perfectly round. Now I'm going to go to my Move tool. I can move that. Now you're probably not going to do this, on this project, but just know that this is what the selection tools do. They select areas and pixels. This is why we call it a pixel-based program. So this has other options, a single row, single column, etc. Now the lasso tool, by the way, you have to click off of things. For example, if I select this area here with an ellipse, and you can see the little ant trail, the moving marquee. If I want to deselect, I just click outside of the area that's affected. So I click outside, it goes away, so it's deselected. The lasso tool, and you see the drop menu here. You've got a magnetic lasso, polygonal tool. That's going to come in handy. But the lasso tool is more of a freehand. If you just want to select an area that's more free-handed, let's say I want to cut the shape of a big fish out. Okay, don't be making fun of my fish, but I've got a fish shape there, and I want to move that out. Well, there you go. So, and another thing about all of these selection tools, you can actually feather them. So I clicked off of that to deselect it. If I click on a selection tool, if you'll notice up here in the ribbon, the property bar up above, if you can zoom in close, you can see it says 0 pixels. If I change this to something looser, let's say, I don't know, 66 pixels, okay? And if I drew an ellipse, I'm in the ellipse mode, I'm going to draw an ellipse. Let's say I hit delete, and it's going to ask me, do I want to fill this with white or the background or whatever. I'm just say background color, which is white. Say OK. Now notice what happened. Do you see that? It looks like a starburst or a glow of light. It's because I had 66 pixels. So over 66 pixels in width. It's feathering. It's really called a vignette. So that feathering soft edge. Now, if you want to go back, unlike Adobe Illustrator where you just go undo, undo, Control Z, you can keep undoing. In Photoshop, you can undo one time, and then you have to keep going edit, step backwards. Okay, so you do see the quick commands over here if you want to utilize those. They're different on Mac as they are on PC. But anyway, I'm going to say step back, and I want to get back to where I put that color back in there. Okay, I'm going to put my feathering back to 0 for now, so that doesn't confuse me later. So the lasso tool, here's another selection tool you probably won't need to use. A crop tool you probably won't need to use. The eyedropper tool is a great tool to use. For example, if I wanted to have type that was this color, this kind of turquoise teal color, I could go get my eyedropper, scan over that area, and you can see the color change, right? See that gray circle? I'm just wherever my eyedropper covers. When I cover one of these blue fish, it goes darker, it goes lighter, it just matches whatever color. But if I want to use that color, okay, I've used the eyedropper, I've selected it, but now if you'll see down in the bottom of my toolbar where my swatches are, my foreground, background, now my color is selected to that. I can double click on it and you can see on the color picker, that spectrum of color, where that color is. I could see that if I were using web design, that's the hexadecimal color, 63CAEA. Here's the cyan, magenta, yellow, black recipe. Here's the red, green, blue. Here's the hue saturation. I mean, on and on it goes in brightness. So interesting. And as you select particular colors from this rainbow, or if you're doing it for the web and you want to use only web safe colors, you can click here and you can just kind of select colors. And anyway, just so you know about that. Eyedropper tool is great. The Band-Aid tool comes in, it may or may not work for you. It's a spot healing brush tool, looks like a Band-Aid. The clone tool is interesting. The pencil tool, as you might imagine, is for drawing and painting. If you have a paintbrush, you can select brush, much like you would in Illustrator. You can select the width of the brush, whether the shape of the brush. I've got a fan brush. If I want to brush over here, remember I selected that cyan color. But we're not drawing and painting so much on this assignment. We're actually photo manipulating. So just know that you've got those tools. All of these tools in here can be adjusted by the width of the nib. This is called the nib right here, the end of a brush. The rubber stamp, the other paint tool, by the way, if you mouse over it says history brush tool, eraser tool. You can see these names, paint bucket. If you want to select an area, let's say I want to select an area, I'm going to use the circle again, the elliptical tool. And if I put my paint bucket in here and I select that light blue, by the way, it's just filling the areas that are the similar color. If I wanted to, let me undo this, and I have to step back, step back, step back, step back. I did that several times. I really should create a new layer if I just want to put a light color blue circle over, because what it's doing, it's selecting the exact color that I put my mouse over, my cursor over. So kind of like the eyedropper, and it's only selecting those hues to change to that other color. If I wanted that just to be a solid, I would go over here to my layer tool. I'm really making you dizzy here, but I'm going to say new. Okay, now I'm on a new layer. And in this area, if I put the paint bucket in here, it would feel solid. Nice thing about these layers, let me zoom out just a little bit. When you're in the layers palette over here, remember it says layers. By the way, I can help you a little bit by doing this. I'm going to take channels. I'm going to take it off. You could do the same. Pause anytime you want to stay up with me. Take paths. I'm going to get that off because we don't need it. So we've got layers. I don't need this. I do need this a bit later, so I'm going to keep that there. But see my layer here? I've got a background layer that's fixed, 300 dpi, CMYK. Foreground layer's got this blue. If I want to throw it away, I can. I can just drag it down here to my trash can inside my layers palette. Or if I want to make the opacity lighter, now watch what happens over here. See that? Now that's a tool you may want to use. And if I move this object, I can just move it around and see how it's moving, and it's somewhat translucent. All right, another tool that's really great, if you hit your space bar, I think this works on a PC, a Windows machine as well. But if I want to move the screen around, let's say I'm really zoomed in. By the way, to zoom, you go Control plus or Command plus on a Mac, and I'm zoomed in. If I'm really zoomed in, I want to move around, I hit space bar, and then I grab with my mouth, and I just move things around. You just kind of float things around that way. If you want to zoom out, it's Command or Control on the PC, minus, okay? Command 0 or Control 0 should make it just fit to the screen. So I'm going to zoom out, then I'm going to hit Control or Command 0, and it fits to screen. All right, just a little bit more for you. All right. By the way, there's another zoom tool is down here at the very bottom of the toolbar. It's just a magnifying glass, as you're very familiar with. If you want to zoom out, you hold down the Option button or the Alt button, and it zooms out the same way as it zooms in. You can see the minus sign, plus, minus, as I hit the bar. The text tool, we will be putting in text. You just click on the text tool and then you will click and say this is my text, and it's like every other text tool. It's got alignments up here. There's a line left, a line center, a line right, and those of you who are probably getting familiar with me now, I do not like a line center. Most designers don't, because it doesn't really fit with a grid. Alright, there's some other tools. I think the eraser tool is one that will be beneficial to you. Let me show you the eraser tool. I'm going to go grab this eraser, and I can't go erase text, not unless I rasterize it. But I can erase that circle I drew. So I'm going to click on my layer. I'm going over to the right, click on the layer. See how big my eraser tool is, by the way? If I want to adjust that, I got to go to my brush settings, and I can adjust the size, smaller. There's 113 pixels. There's 289. Remember, this is 300 dots per inch, so you can see my inch, my rulers up here. If you don't have your rulers showing, I think you go to View, Show Rulers, and turn them on. Or you can see the quick key, the Control R, Command R will turn the rulers back on. But anyway, 300 dots per inch. I'm at 2. As I scroll across here, you can see I'm erasing this. This eraser tool will come in handy when you're trying to clean up a background. Here's a blur tool and a sharpen tool, smudge tool. You just really have to play with those and don't be afraid to see what would happen. Here again is this hand tool or move tool. We can just move the screen. Well, if we're zoomed in too close anyway, we can move it. You just move it around this way. But if it's fitting in the screen already, it doesn't affect it. All right, a simple overview of the tools. I'm going to email this file to you that has basically a little cheat sheet for the Photoshop tools. I think you can just Google those. We're not going to be rotating, and you might use a little bit of the pen tool. I'm not sure about that. Probably not. Anyway, quick mask, a lot of these tools, but you may not need to use most of them. So for this project, it'll be rather simple, 3 or 4 layers, unless you take it to another level. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.